had Midnight Sun come out around the same time that Twilight did, I feel like we would have gotten a somewhat different portrayal of Bella's character, because as I said before, I don't think Stephenie Meyer can write female characters.
Wait a damn minute. Wait a damn.
Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby and today we are going to be talking about the Twilight saga in its entirety because I just got done rewatching it about 30 minutes ago, and I have questions and thoughts, but mostly questions that I think Stephenie Meyer has to answer. Why did I start watching Twilight all of a sudden? I've watched Twilight multiple times, but this is the first time that I'm watching it in a while, and in a while I mean a couple of months, because I did watch it last year, but I was watching it with a bunch of guys and they were just tearing it apart just to tear it apart, and I was vehemently defending Twilight while watching it with them. But I just read Midnight Sun, and for those of you who do not know, Midnight Sun is a retelling of Twilight from Edward's perspective because the original series is told entirely in Bella's perspective. So I just got done reading Midnight Sun and it led me to rewatch the movies. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to reread the books in time to watch this, but I've read the books multiple times and I remember the main plot points, and I'll be able to integrate that into this video. After reading Midnight Sun, I was like, okay, let me go watch the movies, and they're worse than I remember. But before I get into that, just a little bit of my history when it comes to Twilight. I was a twihard. I was a stan. You don't understand. When so what had happened was, back in the day, we used to burn something called DVDs. I feel old, but I'm really not. We used to burn DVDs, and on one of these DVDs, my mom's friend gave her a bunch of them, and on one of them was Twilight. I had no clue what the fuck Twilight was, but myself and my 10-year-old self, I had to look it up when the original Twilight movie came out. It was in 2008. My 10-year-old self watched this movie and I became automatically hooked, and for the next like 5 years till like 2012, I would bring my Twilight books everywhere. I saw the rest of the entire series. I saw all of the movies in theaters except for that first one, because I don't even think the first Twilight movie played in theaters, at least where I was. But after that, like, I watched everything. I was a part of Twilight Mania. I was. And I honestly like look back on those memories with fondness, because I was not one of those people who was ashamed of their interests as a child, especially as a young teenage girl, right? Because at the time, a lot of the criticism that people had about Twilight was not for its content, or there were like little like peeps and squeaks about its content, but majority of the people that were hating on Twilight were a bunch of men who were upset that young girls and women liked something. Now, am I going to disregard the fact that there were people out here asking Robert Pattinson to bite their babies? No, but at the same time, like, it was just something where a lot of women or people who identify as women and girls, we had fun, and everybody had a problem with it. Now, I'm not going to say that there's nothing to critique in Twilight, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk a lot about everything that went on in Twilight, but people weren't making any sound thoughts and or arguments. They were just upset about women and girls being happy and laughing, and what's changed in like 12 years. But we're not going to get into that. That is not the video for this. But just to say, I was a part. I'm not just coming on here to like talk shit about Twilight. It is iconic. Twilight shifted the culture. Because of Twilight, we got a lot of young adult romances and young adult, like, I would even go as far to say that like the dystopian, like the time where we were engaging with all of the young adult dystopian a lot of it bridged from like the success of Twilight, and that's fine, but there were a lot of problematic things in this series, and I want to talk about it. I watched a lot of videos about this topic too, but nobody was saying the things that I wanted them to say, so I was just like, I'll just make a video on it, as I so often do. Now this one is going to be long. I don't know how long. The honest truth is I don't know what I'm gonna say when I film these videos until I start saying them. Like, I don't have a script written, which is why I stumble over my words all of the time. But I honestly won't know what you know, like when you think something in your head and when you say it out loud, it comes off very differently. So I could have a thought in my head, and by the time that I'm trying to explain it, or it just sounds terrible. So we'll see what I come up with throughout the course of this video, but I think it'll be fine because I have bullet points that I want to hit so I don't ramble too far. So let us get into it. So the first Twilight movie. I'm gonna tell you what it's about in case you have forgotten. Bella Swan. We get introduced to Bella Swan. Now, funny thing, that whole sequence in the beginning where this person is like chasing the deer in the forest, I did not put two and two together. I did not realize that it was Edward until watching this time. I don't know why, it was like right in my face. It was like, how did I not realize that this person is Edward Cullen just running through the woods hunting? But anyways, I digress. We start off with Bella. Bella Swan is going to be living with her father. She's 17 in this movie, right? Yeah, she's 17, and she moves to Forks, Washington, population of 3,000 odd people, and she goes there to live with her father because her mother just married this baseball player, and her mom wants to travel with her new husband, so Bella went to live with her father in Forks, right? So we get there, and everybody's obsessed with Bella. Now, I understand that Forks is a small town, but the way that everybody was going on about this new girl, it was just, well, I guess there is nothing to do in small towns. If you're from a small town, let me know what you do in small towns. But the way that everybody was obsessing over Bella Swan, and I guess she is also the police chief's daughter, so I guess that would add some interest to her, I guess. But everybody's obsessed with the new girl, and then we get to the iconic scene in the cafeteria where all of the Cullens enter. Now the thing is about this scene, she is iconic, don't get me wrong, but all of the Cullens looked very, very old. And I know that the actors, because Kristen Stewart was the only one who was, I think she was 18 when she was filming Twilight, 17 or 18. I remember this because I used to watch clips, and it was like, they were telling Robert Pattinson to stay away from Kristen Stewart. I don't know why. You know what? I will insert the clip if I see, because I don't want to be talking shit out of my ass. But I vividly remember watching this clip when I used to binge watch Twilight videos, where Robert Pattinson was like, they were telling him like, don't touch her outside of filming, like not in like a creepy way, but still, like that is how I think she was like 17 or something, because she was still a minor and he was 23 playing Edward Cullen. But back to the point, when they were walking in the cafeteria the first time, I didn't realize how old they all looked. I think it was the green tint, the green filter, I guess, that made them look like that. But I did not, like, they looked old. They looked very, very old, especially Jackson Rathbone. I think he played Jasper, and Robert Pattinson. They looked very, very old walking through that cafeteria. I don't think it was a green tint because in the following movies they don't look as old, but that first movie they looked very, very old. Side note, the movie isn't as green as I thought it would be. Going into this, like, I had the perception, I don't know if it's because like the most iconic thing about this first Twilight movie was the green hue. Like, you can't imagine it without the green hue. I'll see pictures of Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart while filming the first Twilight movie, and it's like regular pictures without the green tint. I was like, this looks very, very weird. But it wasn't as green. It's not as green as people make it out to be. But they're walking through the cafeteria, and Edward and Bella obviously lock eyes because they're like the two main love interests, if we can say that. So they lock eyes, and we don't know this, but we know because we read the book. It's like Edward cannot read Bella's mind, so he's very, very intrigued by her. Later on, when we get to Midnight Sun, we'll learn more about that, because I know a large contention is like people don't see what Edward saw in Bella, but we'll get to that point when we discuss Midnight Sun further on. But they lock eyes. Edward can't read her mind. He's intrigued by her, which causes a whole host of different scenarios of him sneaking into her bedroom at night to watch her sleep, and him following her to Port Angeles when she's having fun with her friends. In Midnight Sun, we find out that Edward thinks that Bella can't be safe without him, so he's doing all of this to protect her. I'm not gonna get on that. But anyways, after all of this, even after Bella finds out that this man has been creeping while she's sleeping, she's only concerned about him hearing her sleep talk, because she talks in her sleep, and they're all one big happy family until they go at the baseball game. Now, if you are a fan of cinema, that baseball game, like, people are trying to recreate and trying to emulate what the baseball game in Twilight did for us, and I don't think we appreciate it enough, because it's pure cinematography. It's excellent, but we move. So we get to the baseball game, and then we get to James. James wants to hunt Bella just for the sake of hunting Bella, I guess. It's like a game to him, and I guess if you're like a really, really old vampire, I guess a lot of things don't intrigue you in the ways that it should. So they go on this mission, which ends up with Bella being bitten by James, James being killed by the Cullens, and Edward sucking out the venom out of Bella's arm after James bit her to stop her from turning into a vampire, which I thought was stupid, by the way, but we'll get onto that at some point. This movie was the worst to get through. It was very cringy. So when I set out to make this video, I had a plan. I was like, okay, all of the videos in total are like 10 hours. And I planned out one day where I would film everything. Well, one day where I would watch everything, one day where I would film everything, and one day where I would edit everything. What was supposed to be a 3-day event turned into a 2-week event, which is why I didn't post a video last week, because getting through these movies, or at least getting through these movies on my own, took a certain level of willpower that I just am surprised that I had. Because if I'm with somebody else, like, I'm forced to watch it because they're gonna get annoyed with me pausing every 30 minutes. But I literally had to pause like every other second because there were scenes that were so cringy that I literally just had to like pause, walk around for like 30 minutes, and then come back to the movie. The movie's 2 hours long. I think it took me like 10 hours in total to complete. And there are still some scenes that I skipped. That whole like kissing scene, because I know what happens. It doesn't matter if I skip it or not. That whole like kissing scene, I skipped. The whole scene where like Edward was staring down those people in Port Angeles, I skipped. I skipped a lot of scenes from that first movie, but I think one thing that they got right was the teen angst. One of the only things believable in this entire series, like, believable, it's a story about vampires at the end of the day. One of the only believable things in this series is the overload of teen angst. And when you're a teenager, how you just rush into relationships. I'm saying like I have any experience. I was a teenager yesterday. But that's like one of the only things that was believable in this movie. I don't even have much to say about it because nothing happened. And that's the point. This entire movie was exposition. Like, up until the baseball game, nothing happened. I mean, we learned about Bella a little bit. we learned about Edward and his family a little bit, but not really. It kind of moved Bella and Edward's relationship a bit. And then James hunted Bella so that we can get Victoria to be the villain for the next couple of movies and the next couple of books. So that's all it did, really. It didn't, which is, like, I'm trying to think of how it became popular, but I don't know. Like, my brain right now, like, I guess my brain in 2010 and everybody in 2010 was hooked on it for some reason, but like I'm looking at it and like in terms of a movie, I guess it's because it was never done before, because after Twilight is when we saw the whole explosion of like teen drama, romance, supernatural creatures and everything. So after Twilight blew up is when we saw the interest start to like, when the interest started to go up. But I probably think it got so popular because it had never been done before, or never been done before to that scale, because even Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, they're like, yeah, we thought it was just gonna be an indie movie and then like an indie series, but we know how that went. Another thing that I thought was kind of weird in my 30 minutes of research for this video, Twilight happened over the course of 3 months. The movie and the book. So Bella moves to Forks in January, and in March she gets bit by James. And I bring this up to bring up the fact that that hospital scene, after 3 months of knowing somebody, it kind of gave way to where Bella's like mental state was at for the rest of the series. But you should never be that obsessed with somebody after 3 months of knowing that. And I know it's like all for like dramatic flair, which is why like this point is like kind of nitpicking, but there are a lot of issues with Bella's character that people just don't get right because they're too busy focused on being misogynistic to actually deal with certain issues that deserved to be talked about. But after I found out that they had only known each other for like 3 months and like the entire course of Twilight, I was just like, oh, okay, I guess this is a thing now. But that is all that I have to say about Twilight. This is all gonna come full circle when I talk about Midnight Sun, by the way, but that is all that I have to say about Twilight. It's like it was bad, but it wasn't atrocious. There's one movie on this list particularly that's very terrible, that's very, very bad, that didn't deserve to be made. There's one movie that takes the cake for that, but it isn't the first Twilight, no matter how cringy it turned out to be. Second movie, New Moon, exceptionally better than the first, I must say. A couple of reasons, because they probably had a higher budget to work with, and I genuinely find that New Moon is better than Twilight as a book, which makes sense. Because I would hope that Stephenie Meyer would be improving in her writing, but I vividly remember going to the theater for this movie and it was an experience. In the first scene where Edward Cullen walks up from the Volvo and then he comes next to Belle, everybody in the theater went wild, and guess what? I was one of them, and it was good, it was excellent, it was drama, it was camp, it was everything. So now, if you cannot remember what happened in this movie, how could you not? So it is Bella's 18th birthday. Bella is deathly afraid of becoming older than Edward, because technically she's aging and he's not. And we'll get back to that, because I think Stephenie missed like she missed an opportunity, but this entire series is missed opportunities. But yeah, so Bella is turning 18 and the Cullens want to throw her a birthday party that she did not ask for, by the way. This whole movie is just people doing things to Bella that she didn't ask for. They have a birthday party. Bella gets a paper cut and Jasper just tries to take a bite out of her. Now Jasper is one of the Cullens who struggles with his, this is like one thing that I don't think you would truly get if you hadn't read the book, but like Jasper is one of the Cullens that struggles with his thirst the most. But in addition to that, one of his special talents, because vampires have special talents, well, some of them, his special talent is that he can feel the emotions of everybody around him. So like, in addition to feeling his own like bloodlust when Bella like cut her finger, he's feeling the bloodlust of everybody in the room. So obviously like he lunges and he tries to take a bite out of her. Chaos ensues, and then due to this, Edward decides that he needs to leave Bella because she is in way too much danger, and he does it in one of the cruelest ways possible. And which is why I brought up that hospital scene when Edward's just like, this might not work, and then Bella's like, you can't leave me, and he does it in the cruelest way possible, and I'm just like, you didn't need to do all of that. You really didn't need to do all of that. And then Bella gets depressed for a good 4 months. And I must say, that whole It's a Possibility scene where they did like the passing of the seasons around her, excellent. Very excellent. And I really did like how Stephanie did it in the book. So she just had like the name of the months on each page. So it's been 4 months. Bella's depressed. Nobody's doing nothing for Bella, by the way. Bella is down bad. And then Charlie threatens to send her to her mother's house. So then she's like, I don't want to leave Forks, because I guess she feels comforted being in Forks, knowing that they were in Forks as well. And she's like, I don't want to leave. So she goes to the movies with one of her friends, with Jessica, and she gets on the back of an old sleazy guy's motorcycle because she sees Edward when she does reckless things. We're gonna talk about it. She sees Edward, and then she gets Jacob to fix bikes so that she can be even more reckless and see Edward in her hallucinations. And then through that, she and Jacob become close, whereas Victoria is still hunting her. And then Edward gets a call from Rosalie because Alice had a vision of Bella jumping into a river or a lake. Bella was cliff jumping so she could see Edward. And then Rosalie calls Edward and tells Edward that Bella's dead. Edward then decides to go to the Volturi because he wants to die. And then Alice brings Bella to the Volturi, and then like a whole mess. A whole stupid mess. Now let me tell you something. This movie is very irritating to me because it just glosses over so many fucking things. Nobody was gonna send Bella to therapy. Charlie was going to ship Bella off to live with her mother, but nobody wanted to get Bella there. Even before she started doing stupid shit to get to Edward, Sam found Bella in the woods. So your daughter was in the woods with her boyfriend who left her in the woods, number one. Your daughter, after a breakup, is having nightmares, screaming for 4 months. She's not eating properly because Bella was looking gaunt, or well, the way that the book described it. She is sending emails to Alice's old Alice ain't even reading the email. She's sending emails to an email that doesn't work. Like, she's not getting anything back. It's not like she's writing all of these things in a diary. She's sending emails to Alice's email that she knows that Alice won't read. She is doing all of that, and nobody, like, and it all just gets fixed when they come back. That's the crazy thing. The way that it was framed, it was almost this whole like Jacob is her son, well, not her S-O-N, her S-U-N. Bella used to say that Jacob is her son, and the way that it was framed was very like, Jacob is a reason for Bella's mental health getting better, and you can't put that on somebody. Jacob is a trash character, by the way, but no matter how trash he is, that isn't okay, Stephanie. There was this scene in the truck and Jacob was like, Bella, like, what would you do if I would have told you that I couldn't fix these bikes up? And then Bella was like, Jake, well, I would have said that we could find something better to do together. And I was like, Bella, you liar. Like, have you forgotten the main reason why you want to like fix these trucks up, these bikes up in the first place? You want to do some reckless shit to see Edward. You were not gonna stick around by Jacob if Jacob couldn't fix those bikes. Girl, stop lying. Stop the lies. She was lying through her teeth, but I was just so perturbed because I'm just like, nobody is. And I know Bella was 18, so you can't make her go to therapy if she doesn't want to go, but that's still like a conversation that could have been had, I feel, in the book. And if you really deep it, if Stephanie wanted to take it there, Stephanie could have included her terrible relationship with her mother and her father, because like Bella does not have a good relationship with her parents. I don't know if you read the books, you would know that, but she, like, Renee left Charlie and then she stopped visiting him when she was like a teenager, and Renee is pretty much flighty and just very not reliable. So Bella obviously, before Edward, obviously had some abandonment issues, and like, if you add and factor into the way that Edward left her in the woods by essentially telling her that she is not good enough for him, and his family didn't even say goodbye to her, there was so much that could have been done here. And I don't even want to get too preachy, because Twilight could just be a series about nothing, and that would be fine. Like, Stephanie is all within her rights to write something about nothing where nothing happens. But if you're gonna include some of these themes and only like get toe deep in, then don't include them at all, because like, it's just not giving. It's not giving what I wanted it to give. And I didn't realize this until I got older, and I'm just like, all of these things are very like toe deep. It's not even, we didn't even really delve into Bella's like, she has an issue with aging. It's not even like you can say like she's 25 and Edward is 17 and she's starting to look a bit, you know, you can tell that she's like, she's not old, but she's starting to age, like getting to her 30s and 40s. She was just 18. There's like a conversation that could have been had about women and the way that women age and the way that people perceive women aging in society, but it was not there. And once again, I get that this is meant to be a teen drama, but then again, like, even if it's like, you're taking for granted the intelligence of your audience and different people who can relate to what you're saying if you're just limiting things to one scope. I would have actually liked to see Bella have a conversation with a therapist. I want you to think about it. Like, in Twilight, the way that Bella was in Twilight, and if Bella had to sit down with a therapist to talk about her issues, not just revolving around Edward, but multiple issues that she so clearly has, as we saw from that hospital scene in the first Twilight, where she was just like, I don't even want to use the hysterics word. I'm trying to avoid the hysterics word, because I know that that's been used against women a lot, but she was just not in her right frame of mind when Edward just mentioned the word about leaving. Girl, you've known this man for like 3 months. I don't know. I think that things could have been done better with this movie. There are a lot of things that could have been explored differently and more deeply. If we're gonna have the conversation, then let's have the conversation, is my personal opinion. Certain scenes that I liked. This movie was very pretty, and I don't know if it's because I would like, in terms of Twilight and New Moon, the difference, the stark difference in budget, as you can see. The new moon was very, very pretty. I liked that scene, the symbolism of when Bella went looking for the meadow, when Laurent almost killed her. When she went looking for the meadow and all of the flowers had died, was kind of like a symbolism of their relationship dying. So I thought that that was like pretty cool. That whole scene, that whole like, the whole thing of where the wolves were hunting Victoria, Charlie was hunting the wolves, and Bella was like cliff diving. That was immaculate. I liked that whole setup. It was so good. The music, the pacing of that was really good. That is all that I have to say about New Moon. Oh no. Jacob's wig was wiggy. When Jacob had the long hair, Jacob's wig was giving wig. I was looking at it and I'm just like, if y'all don't get him a lace front, I know, like, it was 2009, but I'm pretty sure that there was somebody available who could have done a lace front, because it was just giving wig. It was terrible. It was very terrible. I didn't like that. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I guess you can say that Edward was as down for Bella as she was for him, because as soon as he found out that she was dead, or he thought that she was dead, he meant to go to the Volturi and ask them to kill him. And another thing that I did not like is how they portrayed Edward coming back within like 30 seconds he and Bella were back together. In the books, this scene played out for like at least a chapter, where Edward was in Bella's room and he was trying to convince her that like he wasn't a dream, and like essentially trying to convince her that no, I'm here. So that I don't like how that was kind of reduced in the books, and I don't like how Stephanie just made Bella forgive him like straight off the bat. I'm gonna get on, when we get to the end, I'm gonna get into my Twilight reimagining. If I had written the Twilight series, what I would have done. But like, even within this context, like, I wouldn't have had Bella forgive Edward that easily, because he just left her in the woods. He knew Victoria. I think he was trying to track Victoria for a while too, but he just like left her there and didn't check back to see if she was okay. But overall, like, as a movie, especially in comparison to especially in comparison to Twilight, I liked New Moon overall. Now we're gonna get into Eclipse. I, for one, think as a movie, Eclipse might be my favorite. And I say this because there's one more movie after this that I like as well. But Eclipse is stunning, okay? Eclipse is beautiful. They shot it in Vancouver. Just like the sights and the terrain and everything like that. Eclipse, just visually, Eclipse is very pretty to look at. The director did a really good job, because Eclipse is also very much darker than the rest of the movies, in terms of like color and in terms of subject matter. So Twilight had the green thing. New Moon was very like orange, yellow tones, and then when we get to Eclipse is very gray, but gray in a good way. Not just like one tone gray. Eclipse, like the color scheme, I'll try to put like colors or whatever, not colors, I'll try to put screenshots or something. If I don't, I was too lazy because this video is gonna be way too long as it is. But Eclipse was very visually pleasing to look at. So what happened in Eclipse? Eclipse is where the most happens in this story, I believe, because we get Victoria. I think Victoria was a very good villain, and this was her movie, and she did what she had to do. So I think they changed actresses from, did Victoria's actress change in New Moon or Eclipse? It's one of them. But the actress for Victoria, although she didn't have like a lot of screen time, she did kill it. So what was the purpose of Eclipse? Half the movie, Edward is trying to get Bella to marry him, and Bella is trying to convince Edward to turn her into a vampire. That is the summary of Eclipse. And while all of this is going on, Victoria from the first movie, so Victoria's mate was James, and Victoria wants to kill Bella, mate for a mate, because she wants to make Edward suffer the way that she is suffering after Edward killed James. But I don't even think it was Edward who killed James, because Edward was busy sucking out the venom from Bella's arm. In order to do this, Victoria is creating a vampire army. That is what she finds. That is what she wants to do. She wants to create an army to attack the Cullens to get to Bella. And through this, the wolves end up helping the vampires fight the vampire army that Victoria has created. We learn about the stories about the wolves that Stephenie Meyer made up. We learn about that, and yes, that is the premise of the movie. In the end, Edward ends up killing Victoria, so there is that. Kristen Stewart, I have to mention this before I get into anything serious, because this is going to be a lot of serious talk for this movie. Kristen Stewart's wig was given wig. I don't know what went on in the wig department or the costume department for Jacob in New Moon and Bella in Twilight. Kristen Stewart had to cut her hair she wanted to cut her hair for the Runaways movie that she did, and I think they offered her like $800,000 extra or some crazy figure to not cut her hair, but she did. And she had to wear a wig. The wig was giving wig. The wig was given, the wig was not, I don't think it was a lace front. You could tell the wig was giving very much so wig. But yeah, I had to mention that. Now on to more serious topics. This was the first movie that I decided that I hated Jacob as a character. I hate Jacob Black, and from here on out, nothing that he did redeemed his character for me whatsoever. In a lot of the videos that I watched talking about Twilight, a lot of people try to paint Bella as a hot girl. And I mean, I guess you can see that kind of, but too many people aren't talking about how manipulative Jacob was, because I feel like Jacob has to know that Bella had some mental health issues. I'm sorry. And I know that this might be a little bit too close for home. It's a movie, I get it. But Bella was very mentally ill, and Jacob was very, very manipulative. Bella could not have told Jacob, I don't want you, in any more ways that she did. At every chance that Bella Swan could get, she was telling Jacob Black, I do not want you. At the end of New Moon, Bella said, Jake, do not make me choose, because it's going to be him, and it is always going to be him. Bella was very clear, and Jacob was a manipulator. Jacob kissed her without her consent. When Edward came back and Edward was like, you do not touch her without her permission, I was like, okay, Edward, I see you. We see each other. He kissed her without her consent. A lot of people are upset for Bella for kissing Jake before the whole Victoria fight, but he did that thing that men do. He was like, I'm gonna go get myself killed. Obviously somebody Bella, as insecure as Bella, is gonna be like, no, Jake, no, don't do that. Kiss. He coerced her into doing that. So we're not gonna act like Bella was just the big bad, like leading Jacob on. I'm getting heated. I shouldn't get heated. We're not gonna spin history like this, because that man is abusive. Am I gonna say that? Yes, because what he does, what happens even later on, which is what Stephenie Meyer, I have questions. Like, he's abusive. If we really look at the situation and look at it for what it is, he's abusive. Is Edward I'm gonna say Edward is a bit better, because I don't think, from what we know, Edward never did anything to Bella without her permission. But Jacob was all up, and like she told Jacob no multiple times, which is why I don't get. She could not have said no in any other way than say she said no. She's like, Jake, I don't want you. But there he was. She said no. He said, I don't believe you. I think it was the scene like right before he like kissed her without her consent. She said no, and he said, I don't believe you, and proceeded to kiss her anyway. So what do you want me to do with this information, Stephanie? Especially after what you made him do in the next movie. What am I supposed to do with this? As a fan of this series, what do you want me to do? Terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. When I get into Edward protecting her, I'm like, yes, Edward. But then Edward also like took her battery out of her truck so she couldn't go see Jacob. But then I'm just like, okay, maybe he did that because he could read Jacob's mind, and like he could tell that that man was not all the way there, so maybe that's why he did it, because he wanted to protect her. But then I fall into that trap, and then I'm just like, then I remember that after having an argument with Edward about her safety, she got onto Jacob's motorcycle instead of acting like an adult and trying to fix this argument with this man who she wants to turn her into a vampire and live the rest of her life with him. I'm just like, make it make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense, which is why I'm so very fucking confused. We also get some of the wolves' backstory. Not the wolves as well, but we also get some of the vampires' backstory, specifically Rosalie and Jasper's. We're gonna talk about Rosalie later because Stephenie Meyer bastardized her character. We're gonna talk about Rosalie, but let's talk about Jasper, because not too many people are talking about the fact that Jasper used to be a Confederate soldier. Jasper used to be a Confederate. So he was a major, he had ranking in the Confederate Army. And this is probably why Stephenie didn't want any of the Cullens to be black. She didn't want any people of color in the Cullen clan because, ooh, that was the Cullen clan. Ooh, the kick, ooh. That just hit. Like, see, this is what I mean when I say I don't know what I'm gonna say until I start saying it. Ooh. But apparently Miss Meyer wanted all of her vampires to be white, and Catherine Hardwicke had to fight for Laurent to be black. So, but, and listen, if we even take out the fact that we can be like, okay, like, he's old, and he used to be in the Civil War. But the way this man was talking about he was talking about being in the Confederate Army as like he's like, I was the youngest major in the Civil War, talking about it with like, no wonder none of the Cullens were black, because he would have called them slurs. Jasper, if the Cullens had any members of color, if the Cullens were anything but pasty and white, Jasper would have been calling them slurs. This is my interpretation, because he could have been in the Confederate Army. Okay, I'll give her that. But the way that he was talking about it left a little bit to be desired. I was just like, hold on, wait a minute. What are we doing here? But anyways, Jasper was kind of central to the story in Eclipse because he used to help Maria when Maria was building her vampire army, so he has a lot of experience with newborns and all of that jazz. And he was more remorseful from helping Maria than he was about being in the Confederate Army. Oof. Just terrible when you really think about it. The other biggest plot of this entire movie, as I said before, was Bella wanting to be fucked by Edward. That was very crass. I'm sorry. The other bigger plot of this movie was Bella wanting to have sex with Edward. and Edward, it wasn't even, I don't even think it was because of hurting her. He just didn't want to have sex with her, and they weren't married. And this is where a lot of people like to say that Stephanie's Mormon beliefs came into her writing, which isn't surprising because I'm pretty, I hate this word, but I would be what you consider to be quote unquote progressive. And if I were to ever write something, then my views would obviously spill out into what I'm writing. Even like filming videos and talking like this, a lot of my views spill out into what I'm saying because it's a part of who I am. So it's not surprising that Stephanie's Mormon beliefs came into play here. But a lot of people were saying that because she's Mormon, she has this view on marriage, and I get it, but I also understand, like, I also understand it differently, because in this instance, it makes sense why Edward would want to get married, because according to Stephanie, so Edward got changed in 1901. I know these dates like the back of my hand because I was a child. Anyways, Edward got changed in 1901. He's from the Victorian era. The Victorian era had certain ideals about marriage, although I think they pertain mostly to like class and just like a duty instead of love, so we can argue that point. But Stephanie made it very clear to point out that when vampires change, like, their ideals and beliefs are also petrified with them, which is stupid, but it's her plot point, so I'll give her her plot point. But so with that could be a reason as to why Edward was so obsessed with marrying Bella before they had sex. So like, I guess it fits into the plot of the story, but I also understand why Bella didn't want to get married. Bella was 18 years old. Bella came from a broken family, which they didn't even address really in the movie or the books to the depth at which I would have wanted it to be addressed, because in the movie she ended up asking Charlie, like, they had like a 30-second conversation about marriage until they ventured off into like safe sex, but kudos for trying, I guess. But there wasn't really any talk about Bella coming from a broken home and all of her issues and all of that. But Stephanie didn't want to do it. I would have done things very, very differently. But Bella was 18 and didn't want to get married, and in the end, if we deep it, she really only agreed to marry Edward so that he'd have sex with her while she was a human, because she wanted a human experience. And who am I to question? Like, listen, if you need to get married to get dick down, then kudos to you, I guess. Let's talk about the wolves. This is so very like, this is a nuanced topic to me. I feel like this is complex when we get into the topic of the wolves. I'm not even going to get on imprinting yet. I'm saving that for the end, so you have something to look forward to. Or I'll just like timestamp it and then you can skip over there if that's what you want to do. But Stephanie has gotten a lot of criticism for the implication that the wolves are hot-tempered, they're quote-unquote violent, and you have all of this being attached to Native American men, which is problematic in and of itself. But I did a video on Teen Wolf, right? And in terms of the whole werewolf trope, all of those characteristics of being like hot-tempered and violent and all of that, those are all characteristics of werewolves when we talk about supernatural shows, right? So you have that. However, context matters. And when you say that this Native American tribe has the wolf gene, and there's no like mention of other people having the wolf gene or other people being able to get bitten to turn into a wolf, therein lies the problem. Because in Teen Wolf, like, the wolves can just be anybody. The wolves are whoever. But you're specifically stating that this is a wolf gene that allows these people to turn into animals, and portraying them as violent and savage and all of these things have very heavy and damning consequences when you attach it to Native American people, who obviously have a whole host of different issues that I am not equipped to speak about, right? Outside of this context. So there's that when it comes to the wolves. The other part is that Stephenie Meyer took all of their stories and just like fluffed it up for her own enjoyment. And there is a limit at which you can take creative liberty with people's culture, especially if you are not somebody from that culture. Two things can be true at the exact same time. So for example, I read up a lot on people saying that Twilight did bring a lot of tourism to the QUILEUTE tribe in Forest, Washington. It raised like tourism, they were able to sell more product, they were able to do all of these different things, and it did get a lot of Native American people on screen for roles that did not involve them being in loincloths, right? So that is a win. But also on the flip side, they had to like start like teaching people that they're not actually animals, that they don't turn into wolves. Yes, the wolf, like it's a part of their culture, like it's there, but they do not actually turn into animals. So you have the flip side. And also, I feel like I was tricked, I was bamboozled, I was hoodwinked, and I was led astray. Because why do I have vivid memories of people trying to convince me that Taylor Lautner is Native American? I only found out that he wasn't, not even more than a year ago. I think it's like I found out that he wasn't Native American this year. Because I vividly remember having these conversations with my friends, and we were just like, oh, like, yes, at least like Taylor Lautner is actually like Native. He has distant Native American, he's as Native American as anybody else who says they have distant Native American relative. He's just spicy white. His entire family is white. I guess like the privilege skipped him. The phenotype skipped him. But he's not actually Native American. But we move. I guess we move. The other thing that I wanted to say is that in regards to the wolves and the QUILEUTE tribe, the actual tribe, they need help. Now as I speak, now as I make this video, and I'm gonna leave like a couple of links down below in the description, but they need help and they need donations. And the thing is, like, while Twilight was happening, while like it was popular, they were able to get certain legislation and things passed through Congress that ended up helping them out in the end. But Stephenie Meyer is like millions of dollars richer. She has millions. She never has to worry about a dime in her life ever again. And those people were never given anything out of the Twilight money. Hype only lasts for so long. Like, they need resources and they need funds in order to like preserve their way of life and actually make things better. But Summit Entertainment and Stephenie Meyer just made so much money off of them, and they never got a red cent of Twilight money after she like took their stories, turned it into something else, and then repackaged it and sold it to everybody. So I feel like it's nuanced. Yes, it did help them for a short period of time, but they need help now, and Stephenie Meyer is nowhere to be found. And she's like rolling in her bed of money. So one of the biggest this is the last point on Eclipse, by the way, because I've been talking about it for way too long. One of the biggest sins of this movie is the death of Bree Tanner. Now, if you are a twihard like me, then you have read the second short life of Bree Tanner, which was essentially Stephanie Meyer telling the story of Bree Tanner, which is a young girl. I think she was like 15 or 16 when she was changed by Victoria, a part of the army. At the last minute, she didn't want to fight, so Carlisle and Esme granted her asylum. And then the useless Volturi showed up and they killed her. The Volturi is also like one of my least favorite. They're my least favorite because Stephanie didn't know what to do with them. But that happened. And I'm just like, why would you do this? Bree Tanner was an opportunity to spice up a very, very dull story. She could have added so many different dynamics to the story had she been allowed to live. Like, it was so senseless and it was a pointless death. Probably used to portray the cruelty of the Volturi, but the Volturi are useless. You literally have, up until this point, up until like Eclipse, like the Volturi has been useless. The Volturi hasn't done anything, which is why I was so confused as to why they were such like a major plot point in the story, because like if you deep it, like they don't do nothing. Even when the newborns were tearing up Seattle, when what's her face? Kate? Not Kate. Jane. This story has so many fucking characters, y'all. But when Jane was just watching them tear up the city, I was just like, why would you, like, isn't the whole point of this, isn't the whole point of why Bella's supposed to stay human is to maintain the secrecy of vampires, and then you just have Victoria going around killing everybody very conspicuously, by the way. And like they made no sense to the story in my humble opinion. But Bree could have added so many different dynamics to the Cullen family, but we're on. I very much so liked Eclipse. One of my favorite scene is like the fight scenes. When they actually do what they're supposed to do, these fight scenes are directed very, very well. So I liked the whole like vampire and the wolves and them fighting the vampire army. I liked Edward killing Victoria, that whole scene with Seth. Even though that wasn't how the story happened with the third wife, because Stephanie made that whole thing up when she like cut herself in order to distract the vampire. I liked how that symbolism was brought back towards the end of Eclipse. That is all that I have to say on Eclipse, which is enough, to be honest. This is where we go from worst to worser. This is where, like, I don't even have much to say. This belongs in a dumpster bin. This belongs in a fire. This movie didn't deserve to get made. This splitting the two movies up into two is just a cash grab. Because when you think about it, the way that Twilight fans were dedicated, the way that we were doing things, we would have sat through a 3-hour movie if it was good. It was just terrible. And that is Breaking Dawn Part 1. I hate everything about this movie. It was bad. Bella gets married, pregnant, and becomes a vampire in this movie. That is the plot. Nothing else happens. It was terrible. It was very, very terrible. I was very, very disappointed. And the thing is, I don't even know, because I did read Breaking Dawn, but I remember reading Breaking Dawn and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? I got to the point where Jacob's perspective happened in Breaking Dawn and I was like, Stephanie, you have lost your goddamn mind, because this didn't need to happen. That fetus is literally sucking the life out of Bella Swan. See what I did there? She had to post an entire blog post after the book came out explaining how Edward as a vampire got Bella pregnant. It had something to do with his semen, but I don't even know how sperm can live in his semen, because he's not created. She gave some bullshit explanation that don't make sense till this day. I feel like this was just a situation that didn't need to happen. I don't know why she would include it here, because this is literally Stephenie Meyer's views on abortion. Are we gonna argue that? I don't think that anybody could argue with me on that point, because there was literally no reason for Bella Swan to get pregnant. You can make the argument that this movie could be considered pro-choice. I would very much so disagree with you, because you'd be wrong. But you can say that, and then you can say that Bella chose to carry the fetus to term, and she chose to do all of these different things. However, like, we're not going to dismiss the very real life implications that this has. We're not going to dismiss the fact that in a lot of anti-abortion laws, there's always this like jarring like lack of concern for the well-being of the mother in the situation. So we're not gonna do all of this. This movie was just literally so terrible. The way that they had Kristen Stewart looking, terrible. It was just very, very bad. And I just sit here to say, like, I can't believe that happened. Like, it was literally sucking the life out of her. And then, like, it was just, oof. Stephenie Meyer had Bella drinking blood. Like, this is the extent at which it went. And I don't think I realized how crazy it was until I got older. Stephenie Meyer had Bella drinking blood and saying, oh my gosh, it tastes good. Have you forgotten Bella Swan is your character? Have you forgotten that this is the same girl who faints at the sight and smell of blood? What are we talking about, Stephenie? Why would you do this, Stephenie? Like, we're not gonna act like this is so, like, that it's so distanced from real life situations, because like, every woman who goes through a situation, well, not exactly like Bella, but every woman who has to make the difficult choice between like her life and the life of a fetus, like, we're not gonna act like there's like a vampire on call to bite them after they die in childbirth, Stephenie. I just don't know what that movie was. I have nothing for it. This is if you can tell, this is the one that I hate the most. I did chuckle when Bella's spine cracked in the movie. I was like 14, like, leave me alone. I did chuckle when her back went. I'm terrible. I laughed. I did. And then after the child is born, you have Jacob about to commit infanticide after he imprints on a fucking baby. Are you kidding me? Up until this point, up until Breaking Down Part 1, Edward Cullen has never looked happy in this entire thing. He always looks like he's in perpetual pain. That changes in the next movie that we're gonna get into. But he always looks like he's in perpetual pain. Like, he's just like, I do not want to be here. And we also find out about his rebellious phase when he went around killing rapists. So good for him. Good for Edward. Like, I had nothing to say to him on that. Another point that annoyed me in this fucking in this story is that the whole Edward and Bella having sex thing. So I know book fans were disappointed because Stephenie said she don't write lemons. Stephenie Meyer was not going to give anybody a lemon for the life of me, but they pulled through in the books, I guess. I still can't watch that scene because it's so awkward to me. But after the first time that they have sex, Edward decides that he is not going to have sex with Bella again because he's a vampire. He's obviously he's stronger than her, and he bruises her when they're having sex, right? Which is a very mature decision to make. He's like, I do not want to hurt you. And in the movies, it's actually better than it was in the books, because in the books they describe it as her like, Bella had like bruises on her face in the book. She had bruises everywhere, and they didn't do that much for the movies, like, effect. But the thing is, they don't do that much for the movies, but then they had Bella breaking her back at the same time for the so you have that, and so Edward makes a very responsible choice, and he's just like, yeah, like we did it once, it was fine. It's not because I don't want you, it's not because I don't love you, it's just that I don't feel good when like I see you like bruised up because of me. I am not like, I guess the dick was so good. I guess Edward put it down very, very good, because one night, like, Bella is effectively trying to coerce him into having sex with her. And one night she wakes up from a sex dream and she's crying and she's like, it was such a good dream, and like she basically guilts him into having sex with her again. And it's just so uncomfortable, because now that I'm way more informed about like consent and all of that stuff, it was very uncomfortable for me to watch, because I'm just like, this is not right, this is weird, this is wrong and all. Yeah, so I hated Breaking Dawn Part 1. I could have done without Breaking Dawn Part 1. I have nothing for this movie. Like, it was just, it was bad. It was all around just bad. There were no, like, good, memorable scenes or anything. It was very, 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 very bad, in my opinion. And now we get into Breaking Dawn Part 2, which a lot of things happen in Breaking Dawn Part 2. I liked Breaking Dawn Part 2 way fucking more than I liked Breaking Dawn Part 1, which isn't saying much because I hated Breaking Dawn Part 1. But Bella wakes up as the perfect vampire. Bella wakes up, Bella doesn't have to work for nothing, Bella has perfect control. Like, of 3 days after being changed into a vampire, Bella can see her father, which was terrible. The explanation that they give Charlie, which is essentially no explanation, terrible. Edward looks way happier in this movie though. Edward is way happier, he's trying to have sex all the time. So there's that. So the plot of this movie, if you have forgotten, because it's very easy to forget, Bella wakes up as a vampire, and Renesmee gets imprinted on by Jacob. We'll talk about that in the end. So Renesmee gets imprinted on by Jacob, and so Bella's just like living life as a vampire. She's with her daughter, and one day Renesmee is out catching snowflakes, and Irina, if you didn't read the books and you have no idea who Irina is, but Irina sees Renesmee up in the sky. Irina sees Renesmee up in the sky catching snowflakes, and she thinks that Renesmee is an immortal child. Now, an immortal child is a child that was turned into a vampire, and as I mentioned before, vampires are stuck, they're petrified at the age, and they have all of the same ideals and morals that they do when they're turned. So since these children are changed when they're children, they're children forever. And children, when they have a temper tantrum, these children would just go out and end up killing people because they're vampires and they don't know what else to do and they can't control their impulses like adults supposedly can. So in the end, the Volturi had to dispose of all of these immortal children. So Irina thinks that the Cullens have created an immortal child, and she's friends with these people. So instead of telling them, like, instead of inquiring, like, to them, like, yo, what's going on? Like, this shit is, like, what's happening? She decides to, like, go from a 0 to 100 real quick, and then she decides to go to the Volturi and tell them that the Cullens have created an immortal child. And the Aro, for some reason, is obsessed with the Cullens, and he wants Alice because she can see the future, and he doesn't have anybody in the Volturi Guard who can see the future, and a whole mess that does not make sense. So in that, like, the Cullens go out looking for witnesses who can attest to Renesmee being born, but I don't know why that even happened, because in the end they just made Renesmee touch Arrow's face so she can put her thoughts in his head anyways. So why did you have to go out and look for all of these people? I mean, because the general consensus is they weren't preparing to fight. They were literally just looking for witnesses that can attest to Renesmee being born, forgetting the fact that Renesmee had a beating heart, and she also could show Aro. She could also touch Aro's face. Like, they had that little girl up and down touching all these people's faces, and I was like, she could have done this to Aro in the beginning, so the whole plot point would have been done with anyways. But I did not write this story. So that happens. So fucking when that fight scene came on in the theater, when Carlisle's head came off of his body, the eruption, because I went to see this opening night. I was the first one in line to the movie theater when Twilight Breaking Dawn came out. When Carlisle Cullen's head came off of his body, in my theater, you could hear a pin drop, and then it was chaos for the foreseeable future. It was a lot. It was a lot. And the thing is, by the end, people started getting into it. That could have been a good well, then again, you don't want to end a series like that, and I understand why they didn't end it like that, but there was a lot of speculation as to how this movie would have turned out, because nothing actually happened in the book. They had that whole like showdown, and Alice showed Aro her vision, but there wasn't anything really happening. And so I'm happy, in order to like make the movie, they obviously had to put some extra stuff in there, which included all of the fight shit that went down, which was amazing, and I really, really liked it. But there wasn't anything interesting other than that. The thing about Breaking Dawn Part 2 is that I don't want to say that it was unoffending, but after the atrocity that we witnessed with Breaking Dawn Part 1, it could only go up from here. So I'll leave it at that. Get into some things that I just have to get off of my chest. Let's talk about imprinting. Let's talk about Jacob being a predator. Let's talk about Renesmee being groomed literally from the moment that she was born. Let's talk about Stephenie Meyer making these executive decisions, right? And that damn CGI baby, that was a fucking choice. Like, I know that they wanted Edward and Bella, they wanted the baby to look like Edward and Bella, but at the end of the day, like, that, it looked terrible. So, imprinting, which removes all consent, which I guess Jacob did not have a problem with because he kissed Bella without her consent. So for those of you who do not know, if you've made it to this part of the video and you don't you know nothing about Twilight, thank you for staying. Imprinting is something that only werewolves can do. And it is essentially werewolves finding their soulmate, but it removes all choice from the situation. You know how I know it removes all choice from the situation? Because Sam turned into couldn't control his anger, turned into a werewolf, scarred his fiance's face, and then she still ended up staying with him because it wasn't something that he can control. And this entire thing, through this entire series, they've painted that imprinting, you can't control it, you can't control it, you can't control it. But they don't offer any insight on, because all of the wolves except for Leah are men. We're gonna get to Leah in a second. All of the wolves for Leah all of the wolves except for Leah are men, and they do not even, like, Stephenie doesn't even mention like the choice of these women that these wolves are imprinting on, because to my knowledge, there are no gay werewolves. and there are no gay vampires in Stephenie Meyer's world. But like, what happened to choice, Stephenie? These are the questions that I'm asking. What happened to choice? And then this isn't even new for her, because if you read the book, you would know that Carlisle met Esme, his wife, when she was a child. What was the need? There wasn't any need for that. There wasn't any need for us to know any of that information, that Carlisle met Esme when she was a baby. So us knowing that, and then jumping into this whole bullshit of Jacob and Renesmee, when I tell you I wanted to throw up, when I tell you I was eating about, like, how long I've been filming this for, like probably an hour and a half, and I told you that I finished watching the movies about like 30 minutes before I watched it. When I told you I wanted to throw up, I wanted to like, Jacob imprinted on a baby. Renesmee hasn't even said her first word yet. She does not know who she is. She don't know, like, she just pissed. She has probably didn't even take her first poop yet. Her first shit, she hasn't pissed yet. And Jacob, like, she's already tied to Jacob for the rest of her life. And the explanation, I'm not even sure what the explanation is supposed to be, but allegedly Jacob was so infatuated with Bella because Renesmee was Renesmee was part of Bella, but doesn't that also mean that Renesmee is part of Edward too? So where do we go from here? When I tell y'all this bit of the story makes absolutely no sense, not to mention that this is essentially grooming is what it is. I don't know why it's so quote-unquote controversial, because I was looking up stuff on this and they're like, oh, like the Jacob stuff is controversial. How is it controversial? It's nasty is what it is. And they tried to paint it as this whole, oh, like, you'll be whatever she needs, like a protector, a friend. We all know that this is all leading up to romantic love. We all know that this is where it's going. If you read the books, you know that Quill imprinted on a baby right before Jacob imprinted on Renesmee. This has been where the series has been going from the very, very beginning. We did not need to know that Carlisle knew Esme when she was a baby. That is something that could have been left out of the story, and we would not have missed it, given it 2 glances. We would have been fine. We would have been cool. But for some reason, Stephenie decided that this was crucial information that we needed to know, that she included it in the story. We didn't need that. Jacob is a pedophile and a groomer. Am I gonna get, like, are people gonna be mad at me for saying that? I don't think so. I hope not. I hope you would understand the situation. He is literally watching her as she grows up. When they were talking to the young guy who was half vampire, half human, and he was like, he stops aging he reached full maturity at 7. Jacob is probably like foaming at the mouth. He's like, I only have to wait for 7 years. I don't even have to wait until she's like 18 or anything. I can just wait the 7 years and then she'll be fully grown up. Like, how are we justifying these things? I don't know, because there's no way for them to be justified. So that was just plain disgusting. Next thing that pissed me the fuck off, Rosalie's kid. You know what the problem is, and we'll talk about it more when I talk about Midnight Sun. I don't think Stephenie knows how to write female characters, and it's a shame, actually, because what she did with Rosalie's character was very, very terrible and very, very sad. So Rosalie had a very, very rough start, a very, very violent start when she became a vampire. What had happened to Rosalie is that she was sexually assaulted by these group of men, and they left her in an alleyway to die, and then Carlisle found her, and then Carlisle changed her. After Rose became a vampire, Rosalie dressed, because it was her fiance that did this to her with another group of men. Rosalie put on her best dress. She put on a wedding dress and she went after all of these men one by one. And I was like, that is a bad bitch right there. Where is Rosalie's story? Number one. Number two, throughout this entire series, Rosalie hated Bella. Rosalie did not like Bella because Bella was going to throw her life away to be with Edward. And we can deal with like Bella as a character. I've talked about Bella as a character through this entire series. We can talk about her flaws, but she was 18, but she also has the right to make her own decisions, and she also has the right for autonomy and what she wants to do. Bella wasn't thinking about kids. Bella didn't want kids. Maybe she would have changed her mind. Maybe she wouldn't have, but she didn't. At the time she was 18, she didn't want kids and she wanted to be a vampire. Who was Rosalie to be upset at that choice? And we can say that. We can just be like, okay, that was just her character. But then we get on to very, very weird things happening, because after Bella gave birth, or after Bella died giving birth to Renesmee, and Rosalie had the baby in her arms like it was hers, she did not make one move to go check to see if Bella was okay. She was rocking that baby like it was her baby, and she did not give a fuck that Bella had just died on the operating table. So what am I meant to do with this information, Stephanie? I think the logical conclusion that anybody would have is that Rosalie didn't care about Bella's life and she only cared about the baby because she's always wanted a baby, and she has this like this dream of motherhood for other people that other people don't even want. I found it very, very weird that throughout this entire series, Rosalie did not like Bella, and then she only liked her because she had a baby. That was terrible in my book, Stephanie, and I would like to know why. The next thing that I want to touch on is Leah. So if you don't know, because it wasn't even focused upon that much in the movies, Leah used to be Sam's ex-girlfriend. So Sam is the current alpha, and then after he phased into a wolf, he imprinted on Emily, and Emily is Leah's cousin. And Sam got with her cousin, and now she is the first ever female werewolf, and she phased, and that is such a compelling story. That is a side story that I would have liked to seen, but instead I got Jacob's perspective in Breaking Dawn that I didn't fucking need, Stephanie. The thing is, you have like somewhat good ideas, but then when it comes time to bring those ideas to fruition, when it comes to like lay all your cards out on the table, you have nothing. I would have loved to see Leah's I would have loved to see her perspective. If not for the fact that when they're wolves, they have like pack mind and they can hear each other's thoughts. Imagine hearing your ex-boyfriend's thoughts about your cousin. It's just such a wasted opportunity, and everybody was so mean to her. Everybody was just so mean to her. Everyone, when Jacob was talking to her in the movie, he was telling her that nobody even wants her around. When like people were calling her a bitch, a and it was so terrible. It was just so bad. So I would like to know, where's Leah's story, Miss Stephanie Meyer? I want to get into Midnight Sun real quick. It's gonna be, I'm gonna try to wrap this video up because it's already too long. Was Midnight Sun a perfect book? No. Okay, this is my theory about Midnight Sun and its importance to the Twilight series, and why I feel like had Midnight Sun come out around the same time that Twilight did, I feel like we would have gotten a somewhat different portrayal of Bella's character, because as I said before, I don't think Stephanie Meyer can write female characters. I think it would have been different because we understand Bella more through Edward's eyes than we understand Bella through her own eyes, if that makes sense. Like, And there's a way to write, is Bella insane? Because a lot of people's main critique with Bella is that she's not interesting, that she's boring, and da 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 da. And she was written that way throughout the entire series of Twilight. Like she's not very, like, she's boring. She is. I hate to say it, but she is. And when you read Twilight and you get it through Edward's perspective, it is way more interesting. You find out why he's interested in Bella. You learn more about Bella through Edward than you do through Bella. Like, I don't even know if she knows herself. You get a lot more of that family dynamic because the Cullens are pretty interesting. You learn more about Edward and Alice's relationship. You learn that Edward was already planning to leave by the end of Midnight Sun. Like, he was just like, I'm gonna leave. He just needed to find a way to do it. You learn so much. So I feel like, because a lot of this, like, all of the movies are based on the source material, right? And the source material is the books. If the books are not written in such a way where we can understand who Bella is as a person, then you're not gonna get anything much out of the movies. And I feel like since Midnight Sun did a better job at expressing Bella's character through somebody else's eyes, maybe if people had that material, the outcome would have been better. Maybe Kristen Stewart would have known how to act better, because a lot of people can say that Kristen Stewart can't act. I think she can act because I liked her in the Runaways, but there's like a whole lot more nuance in Midnight Sun, and that could be due to the fact that it just came out 20 years. It came out in 2020, and Stephanie could have become a better writer. But I just don't. Wasted opportunity upon wasted opportunity. And my last little fun, like, conclusion to all of this is how I would tell Twilight. Now listen. In my version of Twilight, Bella would have turned into a vampire towards the end. I would have just let James change her, because you had a perfect out. She had already told Charlie that she was going to see her mother because she was terrible to Charlie, by the way. She had already told Charlie that story, that she was going to see her mother. You could have just left it at that and had her be like a missing person. She was out driving through the night, da 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 da. You would have had an easy way out, turning her into a vampire by the end of book 1. At the end of book 1, Bella should have become a vampire. I know she tried to do that stupid gender swap thing with Bo and Edith, where, like, Bo became a vampire at the end. That book was trash. It didn't accomplish. She wanted to write it to show that, like, Bella wasn't a damsel in distress. She didn't set out to do what she wanted to do with that book, so I don't even want to mention it too much. Bella would have died at the end of Twilight, and the rest of the series would be her trying to figure out how to be a vampire and how to live like a vampire. Because I didn't like the fact that as soon as she turned into a vampire, she's just a perfect vampire, and oh, like, Bella was always meant to be a vampire. She can do this and she can do that and she can do that. That's not compelling. That's not interesting. So she would have become a vampire in my book. If you wanted to include the Volturi, you could have included the Volturi in a very, very smart way. I feel like this is what she was trying to do, but I just don't know if she just couldn't execute it properly. If she wanted to include the Volturi, there should have been this thing like, okay, so the Volturi have like 8 people now if Bella would have been turned, and Bella, Edward, Alice, and Jasper, all of them are gifted. That's like a whole, where you could have been like, oh, the Volturi got wind of this, they heard of this, and they think that the Cullens want to take, oh, like, it's like similar to her plot, but it's completely different. Like, they heard that the Cullens want to, like, take over, the Cullens want to do this, want to do that. If you wanted to include the Volturi in any sort of way, because the way she did it was just trash. The Volturi didn't do anything. They're not doing anything. And this one little tidbit bothered me, because I wanted to see the story between the Romanians and the Italians. Like, if you remember, the Romanians in Breaking Dawn Part 2, when they were doing all of their witnesses bullshit, the Romanians used to be in charge of, like, the vampires. So they were the Volturi before the Volturi were the Volturi, and then they took over. You could have included that part with the Romanians. That would have been interesting. I would have let Bree live. Bree would have added such, like, a fresh new dynamic to all of it. She was younger, she's a new character, her home situation was terrible. You could have included her relationship with Carlisle and Esme, you could have done that, and like you could, like, the baby shit did not need to be there. That didn't need to be there. And one more thing that annoyed me with Twilight is that there were no vampire hunters. Like, there weren't any compelling villains, so to speak. Like, Victoria was cool, Victoria was okay, Victoria, but there weren't any like compelling villains for me to like root behind or like wish the downfall of. The Volturi were useless. They had no point being in the story, so I would have completely changed all of that. I don't know, like, it's just, it was bad. So now I get to the point where when I do these videos, oh no, let me rank these movies first. So Breaking Dawn Part 1, trash, terrible, 0, like 1 out of 10, like bad, terrible. Just I had the worst experience watching it. So that was Breaking Dawn Part 1. Like, nothing really happens in Breaking Dawn Part 1 either. Then do I do New Moon or Twilight? I do New Moon. So no, I do Twilight. Sorry. Okay, so my ranking again. So we have Breaking Dawn Part 1 at the bottom, trash. Twilight, the original movie, not trash, but like whatever that was. And then we have New Moon, a step up, a bit better. And then we have, do I want Eclipse or Breaking Dawn Part 1? I think I'll do Breaking Dawn Part 1, and then we have Eclipse at the top. That would be my ranking. And then now I get to the point where I recommend if you should watch this show, if you should rewatch Twilight, or if you should watch it if you haven't seen it yet. After all of the shit that I said, yes, I think you should watch it. I need to find a show that I actually like, a childhood show that I've seen that I can go back and actually be proud of and actually like, because it's getting ridiculous. I would, because as much shit as I can say about it, and it might be the nostalgia talking, it might be my 10-year-old self talking, but Twilight had cultural impact. It influenced a generation, and I feel like if you want to get that little like slice of life back then, it's something to see, just to see what it was, if that makes sense. Like, a part of like pop culture where when people talk about Twilight, you can be like, okay, I've seen Twilight, I know what that is, I know some cultural references, but to watch it and think that you're going to get anything from the story, no. I think the books were better from what I remember. I haven't, and take this with a grain of salt because I haven't read the books in years, but from what I remember, the books were better than the movies, as usually that is the case. But yeah, so that is it. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched this video, I'm about to go edit it now because my camera is about to die, but thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.